The promenade stretches about 2 miles along the seafront, and during off-season it's basically dead after 9 o'clock. I've been doing overnight security here for about 8 months now. It's a council contract, mostly just making sure no one's vandalizing the shuttered kiosks or sleeping rough in the shelters. The pay's not great, but it's quiet work, and I can usually get through a couple of podcasts per shift. I start at 11 and finish at 7. The routine's pretty simple. I park at the north end by the old pier, walk the full length to the bandstand at the south end, then back again. Takes about 40 minutes each way if I'm not stopping to check anything. I do it 4 times a night, log each patrol on the app, take my break around 3. Last Tuesday was freezing, proper cold, the kind that gets into your bones, even through a decent coat. There'd been frost warnings all week, and the council had put grit down on the main paths. But the wooden boards of the promenade itself were slick with condensation. The street lamps were on, but half of them have been flickering for months. Budget cuts, apparently. It made the whole stretch feel longer than usual, these pools of orange light with big dark gaps between them. I did my first patrol without incident. Checked the public toilets, made sure the bins hadn't been tipped over, looked under the benches. All clear. The sea was loud that night. Not rough exactly, but you could hear it properly. That constant rush and pull against the shingle. I've gotten used to it, but it does make it harder to hear other things. Footsteps, for instance. And around 11:30, I started my second patrol. I was about a quarter of the way down when I saw someone standing near one of the shelters. Just standing there, facing the sea. I couldn't make out much detail. Dark coat, maybe a hood, average height. Could have been anyone. It's not technically illegal to be out here at night, but it's unusual. Most people don't fancy a midnight stroll in January when it's 2 degrees and pitch black. I kept walking. My gut was telling me to at least say hello, do the visible security thing, but I figured they'd move on. When I got closer, maybe 20 meters away, they turned and walked off toward the south end. Didn't look at me, didn't hurry, just walked. I thought that was the end of it. I carried on to the bandstand, did my checks, logged the patrol, headed back north. And the wind had picked up, and I had my head down most of the way, hands shoved in my pockets. When I got about halfway back, near the old ice cream hut, I saw them again. Same person, I was pretty sure, same coat. Standing in almost exactly the same position as before, next to a shelter facing the water. But this time they were further north, closer to where I'd just come from. That didn't make sense. If they'd been walking south when I saw them the first time, how were they now ahead of me going north? They'd have had to turn around and overtake me, and I definitely hadn't seen anyone pass. I stopped walking. I stood there for a minute. Maybe more, just watching. They didn't move. The wind was loud and the sea was loud, and I couldn't hear anything else. I thought about calling out, asking if they were all right, but something stopped me. I don't know why. Maybe because they were so still. People don't usually stand that still. I walked past them, giving a wide berth, and finished my patrol. Logged it. Sat in my car for my break and had a coffee from my thermos. I told myself I was being paranoid. It's a public space. Someone's allowed to stand there. Maybe they were having a rough night, needed some air, whatever. I've seen stranger things. But my gut was still telling me something was off. Third patrol, around 2:30. I almost didn't want to start it. I sat in the car for an extra 5 minutes, checked my phone, thought about calling my supervisor. But what would I even say? Someone standing on the promenade? That's not an incident. That's nothing. I got out and started walking. They were there again. This time near the north end, honestly close to the steps that go down to the beach. Same posture, same stillness, facing the sea. I was still at the car park and I could see them under one of the working street lamps, clear as anything. I didn't want to walk past them again. I really didn't. But that's the job. I'm supposed to patrol the whole length. I can't just skip sections because someone's standing there. I walked slowly. I kept my phone in my hand, screen lit, like that would help. When I got close, maybe 10 meters this time, I stopped and called out, "You all right there?" Nothing. They didn't turn, didn't react. The wind was loud, but not that loud. They'd have heard me. I said it again, louder. "Excuse me, are you okay?" Still nothing. I should have called the police then. I know that now. But I didn't want to look stupid. Didn't want to waste their time if this was just someone ignoring me, being awkward. I've had people blank me before. It happens. I walked past them. My heart was going. I didn't look directly at them, but I could see them in my peripheral vision, just standing there, and I swear they didn't move, didn't even shift their weight. It was like walking past a mannequin. I finished the patrol as fast as I could, didn't stop to check anything properly, just wanted to get back to the car. When I turned around at the bandstand to head back, I looked up the promenade and I couldn't see them anymore. All the lights were flickering by then, on and off, making it hard to see anything clearly. But I was sure they were gone. I was wrong. Halfway back, they were there again. Further south this time, past where I'd just been, and standing next to the railing facing the sea. I stopped walking. I just stood there in the middle of the promenade staring. The wind was freezing and my hands were shaking, but I wasn't cold. I was scared. Properly scared. They'd been ahead of me, then behind me, now ahead again. And I hadn't seen them move, hadn't seen them pass me, hadn't heard footsteps, nothing. I turned around and walked back to the car. I didn't log the patrol. I sat there with the doors locked and the engine running, heater on full. And I watched the promenade. I could still see the figure in the distance, just standing there, under a flickering light. I called my supervisor at 4 a.m, told him I wasn't feeling well, needed to leave early. He wasn't happy, but he didn't argue. I drove home and didn't look back. I handed in my notice the next day. Each who told them it was personal reasons, didn't mention what happened. I don't think they'd have believed me anyway. I'm not even sure I believe it. But I know what I saw. Someone was out there, and they knew where I was going before I did. They were always one step ahead, always waiting at the next spot on my route. I still don't know who they were or what they wanted. I just know I'm not going back. The store I work at sits on the edge of town, right where the residential streets give way to farmland. It's one of those places that's technically 24 hours, but really only sees customers during the day. After 11, it's mostly just me restocking shelves and cleaning the coffee station. I've been doing the late shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., for about 5 months now. The pay's slightly better, and I don't mind the quiet. I'm usually alone except for my manager, who leaves around midnight after doing the safe drop. The building's old, converted from something else decades ago, so the layout's a bit odd. The stock room is in the back, past the walk-in cooler, and there's no camera coverage back there, just the sales floor. Last Tuesday started normal enough. I clocked in, checked the cigarette inventory, He's wiped down the pumps outside even though no one had used them in hours. A few customers trickled in before 11. Someone buying energy drinks, a woman getting nappies, the usual. My manager left at midnight. I was restocking the crisps aisle when the door chime went off. A man walked in, average height, maybe late 30s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Nothing about him stood out. He walked slowly down the center aisle, picked up a single tin of soup, and brought it to the counter. Paid in cash. Didn't say anything except thanks. I bagged it and he left. I went back to the crisps. About 20 minutes later, the chime went off again. Same man. This time he bought a pack of gum. Again, cash. Again, barely a word. He left, and I watched through the window as he walked across the car park and disappeared past the edge of the building toward the road. I didn't think much of it. People forget things. Maybe he lived nearby. I finished the crisps and went to the stock room to grab more toilet roll. We keep it on the high shelf in the back, and it takes me a few minutes to drag the ladder over and pull down the boxes. While I was back there, I heard the door chime. I came out to the floor and no one was at the counter. I walked around, checked the aisles. Empty. But on the counter there was a chocolate bar and exact change sitting next to it. My gut tightened a little. I looked at the door, then at the security monitor behind the counter. I rewound the footage. The man had come in, walked directly to the chocolate, put it on the counter with the money, itchy, and left. The whole thing took maybe 15 seconds. He never looked around, never waited for me. I told myself it was fine, weird maybe, but harmless. I rang it up and put the money in the till. I went back to restocking. Around 2 a.m., I needed to refill the milk in the cooler. It's a walk-in, and the door is heavy, the kind that makes a loud click when it seals. I was inside for maybe 3 minutes, rotating the stock. When I came out, the chime hadn't gone off, but there was another item on the counter, a bottle of water, and coins next to it. I checked the monitor again. Same man. He'd come in while I was in the cooler. I wouldn't have heard the chime over the compressor noise, and done the exact same thing. Walked in, left the item and money, walked out. This time I could see his face a little better on the screen. Blank. Not smiling, not frowning, just nothing. I should have called someone then. I had my phone in my pocket. I thought about ringing my manager or even the non-emergency police line, but what would I say? A man bought 4 things from a shop? He didn't threaten me. He didn't even speak to me. I'd sound paranoid. But something felt wrong. The timing. He was coming in every time I went to the back, like he was waiting, watching. I decided to stay on the sales floor. I found busy work, facing up the shelves, wiping counters, anything to keep me visible and near the door. For about an hour, nothing, no chime, no customers at all. I started to relax a little. Maybe he'd gone home. Maybe I'd imagined the pattern. Then the lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make me look up. The fluorescence buzzed louder for a second, then settled, and the store's wiring is old. It happens sometimes, especially when it's damp out. I glanced outside. It wasn't raining, but the pavement looked wet, shining under the forecourt lights. I really needed to pee. I'd been holding it because the toilet is in the back, past the stockroom down a narrow hallway with no windows. But I couldn't wait anymore. I went quickly, left the door cracked, washed my hands fast. When I came back out into the stockroom, I heard the chime. I walked back onto the floor. He was standing at the counter, not facing it, facing the stockroom door, facing me. He had a packet of biscuits in his hand and money on the counter. We made eye contact. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there. I walked to the counter, legs feeling strange, and rang it up. My hands were shaking a little. I didn't bag it. He picked up the biscuits, turned, and walked out. Slow, calm. I watched him cross the car park again, but this time he stopped at the edge of the building and turned back. Just stood there under the light, looking at the store. At me. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to lock the door, but I couldn't. Company policy. We don't lock the doors overnight unless there's an actual threat. And what was the threat? A man buying groceries? I moved to the back of the counter near the phone. I thought about calling the police then. I really did. But he hadn't done anything. He was just standing there. I didn't want to waste their time. I didn't want to seem hysterical. He stood there for maybe 5 minutes. Then he walked off, out of the light, and I couldn't see him anymore. I didn't go into the stock room again, and I didn't go near the back of the store. I stayed at the counter standing, watching the door and the windows. My shift ended at 6. A coworker came in to relieve me, and I left without explaining anything. I don't think I could have put it into words. I requested to move back to day shifts. My manager asked why, and I just said the hours weren't working for me anymore. I didn't tell him about the man. I didn't tell anyone, really, until now. The thing that still gets me is the timing. He knew exactly when I'd be in the back, every single time, and I don't know how. There's no way to see into the stockroom from outside, no windows. The car park's empty at night. I'd have seen a car, headlights, something. I still work at the same store, just during the day now. Sometimes I'm there when it's getting dark, and I'll look out at the car park and think about him standing there under the light. I never saw him again. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he was trying to scare me, or if it was something else. I don't know if he's still out there, waiting for someone else to work alone at night. I just know I'm not going back. The petrol station sits about 4 miles outside town, right where the main road splits off toward the moors. It's one of those old places that hasn't been updated since the 90s. 2 pumps, a small shop, and a single toilet bathroom round the side. I've been working the evening shift there 3 nights a week since October, mostly to help pay off my car loan. The pay's not great, but it's quiet, and I can usually get through a podcast or 2 between customers. This was back in January during that cold snap when everything froze solid for nearly a week. Temperatures dropped to -8 most nights, and the roads were a mess. We'd had hardly any customers all week because people were staying home unless they absolutely had to drive. My manager had called earlier that day to say the heating in the shop was playing up, but the engineer couldn't come out until morning. She asked if I'd be all right working the shift anyway, and I said fine. I'd lay her up. I got there just before 6. The sun had already set, and the forecourt lights cast this harsh yellow glow across the icy tarmac. I could see my breath inside the shop, even with my coat on. The little fan heater behind the counter was running, but it barely made a dent. I remember thinking I should have brought a flask of tea. The first couple of hours were dead quiet. Maybe 3 cars total. I spent most of the time restocking shelves and wiping down the coffee machine, just to keep moving and stay warm. Around 8, the temperature gauge on the wall read -6 inside the shop. I texted my flatmate a photo of it with a joke about workplace health and safety. But she didn't reply. She's terrible with her phone. That's when I noticed the note. It was tucked under the corner of the till, folded once. Plain white paper, the kind we keep by the lottery machine for people to write down their numbers. I picked it up and unfolded it. In blue biro, someone had written, "Pump 2 will freeze at 2040. I checked my phone. It was 8:23. I looked around the shop, even though I knew I was alone. The door hadn't opened since the last customer left at 7:30, and I would have heard the bell. I walked over to the window and looked out at the forecourt. Both pumps were lit, but empty. No cars. No one standing around. My gut told me it was probably just my manager or one of the day staff messing about, maybe left over from earlier. But the handwriting didn't look familiar, and the whole thing felt weird. Why write that? Why leave it under the till where I'd only find it by chance? I folded the note back up and shoved it in my pocket. Forgot about it for a bit. At 9:20, a van pulled up to pump 2. The driver got out, swiped his card, and lifted the nozzle. Nothing happened. He tried again, then came into the shop and said the pump wasn't working. I went outside with him to check. The display screen was blank, and when I pressed the manual release, it wouldn't budge. Frozen solid. I told him to use pump 1 instead and came back inside. My hands were numb. I checked my phone. 8:41. I pulled the note out of my pocket and read it again. Pump 2 will freeze at 2040. 1 minute off. That sinking feeling started then. The kind where your chest goes tight and you start noticing every little sound. I should have called someone. My manager, maybe. Or even the non-emergency police line. But what would I have said? Someone left a note predicting a frozen pump? It sounded ridiculous even in my head. I convinced myself it was a coincidence. Maybe whoever wrote it had noticed the pump acting up earlier and made a guess. Maybe it was some kind of prank. I went back to the counter and tried to focus on my podcast, but I kept glancing at the door. Just after 9:30, I found the second note. This one was on the shelf behind the counter propped up against the cigarette display. I definitely would have seen it earlier if it had been there. Same paper, same blue pen. It said, "Toilet door lock will stick at 2150. I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. I looked at the time. 9:34. I walked to the window again and stared out at the forecourt, the road, the dark fields beyond. Nothing. No cars. No movement. The wind was picking up, and I could hear it rattling the old shop sign outside. Every instinct told me to lock the door and call someone, but I didn't. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. It was just a stupid prank. Someone was winding me up. But my hands were shaking when I picked up my phone, and I couldn't think who to call. My manager would think I was being paranoid. The police would probably laugh. I stayed behind the counter and watched the clock. At 9:50, I heard the bathroom door creak open. No one had gone in. I was sure of it. I would have heard the bell on the shop door. But I walked around the side of the building anyway, my breath clouding in the freezing air, and checked. The door was ajar. When I pushed it shut, and when I tried the lock, it wouldn't catch. The mechanism was stuck. I went back inside and stood by the heater trying to think. Someone was watching me. Someone had been here, maybe was still here, and I hadn't seen them. The forecourt camera was broken, had been for months, and the one inside the shop only covered the till area. I thought about staying in my car until my shift ended, but that felt worse somehow. At least in the shop I could see the road. I almost called the police then. I had my phone in my hand, the number ready to dial, but I didn't. I told myself I'd look like an idiot. 2 correct guesses didn't mean anything. I'd finish my shift, lock up, and leave. Just 2 more hours. Just before 11, I found the 3rd note. It was on the counter right next to the till, even though I'd been standing there the whole time. I don't know how I missed it. Or maybe it hadn't been there. Maybe someone had put it there while I was looking at my phone. It said, "You'll check the stock room at 2320. I didn't go into the stock room. I stayed at the counter, door locked, lights on, until my shift ended at midnight. I watched the clock tick past 11:20 and felt sick. When I finally left, I checked the locks 3 times and sat in my car for 10 minutes before I felt steady enough to drive. I handed my notice in the next day, told my manager I'd found other work. She didn't ask why. I still don't know who left those notes or how they knew. The pump freezing could have been a guess, maybe even the lock. But the last one, the one about me checking the stockroom, that wasn't a prediction. That was an instruction. And I don't know what I would have found if I'd followed it. I drive past that petrol station sometimes on my way to visit my parents. It's still open, still looks the same. I never stop there. I don't think I ever will.